Now, instead of actually going through the movie piece by piece, I'm actually, instead of like completely spoiling the movie for y'all, I'm just going to try to go over the parts that I did not like and then the parts that I did like in a full-fledged review, as well as talking about the whole synopsis of the movie, because we really didn't know the overall plot of this movie for 3 years. And now we finally knew. J.J. Abrams kept this a secret, so now that the movie is actually out, we have a chance to get an idea of what's going on. Now I'm going to start with the whole synopsis of the movie. Now, this takes place 30 years after the Battle of Endor, Return of the Jedi. And all the Jedi are pretty much extinct except for Luke. I really kind of wish that they would explain a little bit more about what happened to the Jedi. Well, actually, yeah, the Jedi was all wiped out except for one. And having Yoda die at Return of the Jedi, Luke was the only one left. And he actually did go and try to get new recruits. But there was one recruit that unfortunately took the whole path of Vader, and he ended up becoming bad. But I'll get into that a little bit later. Now, when it comes to the actual plot of the story, I actually did like it. It was something really interesting. The fact that Luke became a fugitive to the New Order, because the New Order came up through the ashes of the Empire. After the Emperor was killed, after Vader was killed, the entire Empire crumbled. And there was really nothing left of it. And what came from it was the New Order. And I'm not gonna lie, like I said before in my spoiler-free review, the New Order by far surpassed the Empire. It makes the Empire look like a bunch of punks. Like, seriously, they do. They are some hardcore beings. I am not gonna lie about that. But when it comes to a lot of people were just kind of pissed off for the fact that, you know, you got Finn up in there and Finn was black, blah 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 blah. Like I said, I think I said in a review, I can't remember, but either or, instead of doing Mandalorian clones like they did for the Clone Wars and also pretty much throughout the entire prequels and the original trilogy, they do not use Mandalorian clones anymore. They actually do use recruits. Everybody who is a part of the New Order is different, but they are taken from their homes and they are actually trained from very small and conditioned to be stormtroopers. If they're not conditioned, they probably give them another job to do. That is just my theory. But Finn, the one thing that bothered me about Finn and left a huge... honestly, this is a minor detail, but I guess they're trying to find a way to fit him in there. The minor detail that makes no sense is the fact that there was absolutely no record of him being trained to be a stormtrooper. And at the very end, we found out that Finn was a janitor. He was a sanitation worker, which pretty much knew all the ins and outs of the New Order. So my question is, how the heck was he able to get in a stormtrooper outfit without anybody knowing and accepting him being there, knowing that he's not conditioned to be one? And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I know you want to find a way to actually get your character in there, and that's fine. But it would have made more sense if he actually did steal a stormtrooper suit. Nobody really know who he was, and nobody could tell who he was. But everybody has a number. Everybody has a label. They pretty much know who you are. So I'm like, okay, you got a guy that was a sanitation worker that literally was not trained or conditioned to be a stormtrooper, but somehow you allowed him to be a stormtrooper of the New Order? That makes no sense. Now I know that I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I was actually out I was a little kid during the original trilogy, but I'm not gonna wear nothing but nostalgia goggles here because it's Star Wars, and a lot of people are doing that. But that's what they choose to do. There's a lot of huge flaws in the movie. I'll be fine with minor ones, but these are major plot points that are literally just messed up. And you don't want to mess up your major plot points. If there are minor plot points that are left out, that's cool. But when it comes to major ones that actually drive the movie, you do not want to mess this up. That's what happened with a lot of other movies, Fantastic Four, and that's definitely what happened with the Turtles. And the first one. The second one's not out yet, but the first one was bad. But either or. I know they're trying to fit Finn in there, but it just didn't make any sense how they did it towards the very end. But I can say this. Finn, played by John Boyega. John Boyega actually did a good job as Finn. He actually made him likable. But even though they had a huge flaw in trying to bring him in the picture, I can say this. he actually made the character redeemable. So it can be missed. You can actually let that go and just keep it moving when it comes to how he actually played out the character. So I say, even though that's a huge major plot point of trying to fit him in there, which makes absolutely zero sense, that probably will not be explained in the sequels, we can let that slide. We actually can let that slide. And that's how you end up meeting Poe Dameron and getting Poe Dameron out. And I'm fine with that. But the one thing, well, I'm not fine with that, but I can live on. I can live with that. It's not a huge big deal. But when it comes to Rey is one of the strongest female characters, strongest female leads that we have seen in the Star Wars universe, actually, since Princess Leia. Now, I'm talking about heroes. I'm not talking about heels. Not heels, but villains. I'm actually talking about heroes. We don't really have a lot of female heroines out there. And honestly, she's one of the strongest. She's just like Leia, but she's really, really tough. She does what she can do. She makes money being a scavenger in order to eat her food, and she lives inside of an old AT-AT. And honestly, that actually shows that Jakku is a junkyard. It is nothing but bits of the old empire that's just out there, which is actually pretty cool. You don't see anything from the prequels in there, of course, because it's like way later. But you'll see a lot of things, a lot of old ships and stuff that has crashed on Jakku that came straight from the Return of the Jedi. Like you see a really big old Star Destroyer, and then she lives in the AT-AT. And honestly, that actually shows how long ago it was. And I enjoyed that. It's good to actually have nostalgia goggles for a movie that you remember seeing as a kid when it first came out. But Daisy Ridley played a great job as Rey. She not only did she make her likable, she made you kind of related to her. For some people that really want to know what she was about, is this a life she's going to be living throughout her whole life? But honestly, she didn't really think that much about it. She just kept rolling with the punches and kept, living life, even though part of her really wanted to leave. They made her just like Luke. They made her exactly like Luke, yearning for adventure. And she kind of lit up every single time adventure kind of came along. But but Finn, of course, it's a given that Finn has a crush on her. It's a given that Finn has a huge crush on Rey. And Rey, you don't really know. I think Rey just likes to have a companion along. I don't think it's maybe a love thing. I think it's just a companion thing. But for Finn, it may be a different thing. And that's pretty much why he just kind of jumped the gun and went gung-ho. But I will admit this, being a janitor actually does have its advantages. He was able to actually help the Resistance get inside the Planet Destroyer. And it may have a new name, I don't know. I'm just calling it that. But he actually did help them out and was actually able to get them inside the Planet Destroyer from what he knew. But I'm not going to get back into that. But as when it comes to the character of Rey, she was a very, very strong female character. Poe Dameron really wasn't as mentioned and used as much as I would have liked him to be. But he still was a very likable character. Something's telling me that those three are going to probably pair up in the trilogy. There might have another love triangle there between Finn and Poe Dameron. They're gonna probably do the whole love triangle angle. I can just guess that's what they're gonna do for the actual the sequel of it, and that's what I'm thinking. They're gonna probably do some kind of love triangle between Poe Dameron and Finn and Rey. But honestly, Rey, that's just my opinion of it. I actually am making predictions that's what they're going to do. Poe Dameron really didn't team up with him, but there's going to be a point to where he's going to have to. And we're going to learn a little bit more about Poe Dameron, a little bit more about Finn, and it's just going to be like this. That's how it's going to be. And we're just going to have to expect that moving on to the actual, moving on to the sequel. But it was nice to see the old cast. And like I said in my review, the old cast was able to mesh with the new without seeming out of place. And it was nice to see C-3PO, even though he's like the metal version of Jar Jar Binks, but he actually is pretty useful. But it's a shame that we didn't see R2 till the end of the movie, and they said R2 would never be the same again after Master Luke left. But then, here's the funny part. For all these years, the Resistance actually had the other half of the plans, the huge half of the plans. And the one that kind of knew that it's a possibility that he could have had it in his backup drive was BB-8. And BB-8 was when they finally got BB-8 there, he was trying to wake him up, and I'm like, and then he woke up at the very end after the battle was over, and he actually had the other half of the map somehow in his backup drive, and then BB-8 had the other half. I'm like, you guys had, for all this time, y'all never really tried to figure out how to get the backup drive out of ARP-2 since he was inoperable. I don't know. You had that all the time, and then all you needed was BB-8 for the other piece, and then somehow Kylo Ren said, we have the entire map, we're just missing that one piece. Okay, if you have that map and you're missing that one piece, how the heck were they able to get it in R2? And R2 was around before the New Order even came together, which means that they probably stole it from the Empire's hard drive, which is what they did. They stole everything from the old Empire, which means that if they stole it from the old Empire, that means the New Order would not have the other half of the map, which made really zero sense. It just made no sense at all. And like I said, huge plot point with giant plot hole. If you had minor plot points, it would have been fine. But this is a major one. This is the actual drive of the movie. How can you mess that up? But even worse than that was the Force powers. Yeah. I actually did gush a whole bunch. I probably did. Can't remember. I actually did these videos multiple times to try and make sure I didn't spoil it. But like I said, if I did say this in my review, I was highly impressed with the weaponry that was used. The Star Destroyer, they used their standard weapons. The Death Star had their Gallic gun, and I'm calling it that because it's pretty much like Vegeta's Gallic gun. But the Planet Destroyer actually flew their gun from the sun. That's pretty awesome. That is pretty amazing. Being able to literally fuel your planet killing power by the freaking sun. They sucked the sun dry to where it literally made winter everywhere else, and then they just blew it up. And they used that power against everybody. And just blew up every single planet. I actually thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, there were 4 planets that were destroyed. We don't know what the other 3 are, but we know Coruscant was one of them. So Coruscant no more. Bye-bye. It's the new Alderaan. If anybody expected to go back to Coruscant, we're not. They're all dead. No more Jedi Tower. No more Senate. So actually trying to get, which really did make it kind of pointless if you honestly think about it. But I think that, and from what I remember from the original trilogy, is that the Senate was actually abolished. There was really no Galactic Senate because the Emperor actually abolished it. So they really didn't have a government. They didn't really have a republic because the republic literally was dead. It was destroyed by Emperor Palpatine. So they really did not have that. So actually blowing up Coruscant was pointless. It kind of was. Because there was no more galactic order. Because if it took Luke that long to try to get new recruits for Jedi, then you can take even longer to get a government back together. And I know they're like, well, it was 30 years later. So why did it take Luke so long to actually build a Jedi army when it was literally 30 years after the Battle of Endor? And he went into hiding because of what Kylo Ren did, and Kylo Ren was his apprentice. But honestly, guys, there's a lot of huge plot points that made no sense. But here's the one thing that don't make sense. Like I said before, the Force. And I'm not going to go into weaponry anymore because I just did. But I will say this. Daisy Ridley's character, Rey, was able to master the Force within a few hours. It took years of training for Luke to even get an idea on how to master his powers. She was able to have visions. She was able to do the Jedi mind trick. She was able to shield her mind. She was able to use a freaking lightsaber and fly. And fly a ship. They're making the Force more magical than mystical. And that's my problem. because the Force happens to be the main character in this entire saga. Everything is circled around the Force. You're making it into a magical power that somehow chooses its person. And you actually make it like the lightsaber was like Excalibur. They literally took Luke's old lightsaber. She was able to grab it and see every single memory he's ever had, including her own, and what really happened to her family. And I'm like, you're making it into a magical power. And the fact that she was able to master it within a few hours really makes everything that every single Jedi has ever done pointless. It makes all the training, getting an apprentice, getting a teacher, going through years of training to control it, pointless. It does. I'm sorry. This is a major plot point that was just destroyed. Now, I know J.J. Abrams is a fan, and the way he set it up was great. And the way he was able to mesh the old with the new was great. I will not deny that. But he had 3 major plot points just make no sense. And yes, everybody who sees this movie is wearing nostalgia goggles. And it's going to take maybe the 4th time for them to be like, you know what, there's a lot of huge flaws in this movie. But it doesn't make it bad. The major plot points in this movie actually takes it in a different direction if it's done well. But it does bother me for the fact that they actually take the major plot point of this entire saga and completely make it into King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. That's the one thing that bothers me. I don't want to make it medieval. And they're making it medieval. But hey, J.J. Abrams did do a good job with this movie. He did an excellent job in trying to pair everything together and make everything mesh with Return of the Jedi. But there's a huge amount of plot points that should have been answered or at least explained a little bit. You don't have to mask everything. You can actually give the fans a bone and actually be able to set it up for the next movie without giving too much away. That is possible. But there were so many holes in this movie that there was no explanation. And then when you think about it, why did they even decide to do this? There's a lot of questions that were left unanswered, which actually did leave me unsatisfied because there was too many questions left unanswered. Not to mention the major plot points were useless. There were major plot points that were either not explained or not even necessary to do or completely changed. And that did bug me. But do I think it's a bad movie? No. I had a great time watching it. It was great having nostalgia goggles, actually seeing Leia and Han again. And also, the major twists of this entire movie, it wasn't really major. For those who are, those who really do know the Star Wars saga, they're aware of these plot twists. Not really so much by the books, but you can just guess. You can predict it. Like you can predict a wrestling pay-per-view. But honestly, I kind of knew that Kylo Ren was the son of Han Solo. I just kind of knew he had to be one of the twins, especially how they were paired together. But now we know that there is no twins. They only had one child, and his child was named Ben. In actual books, they had 3 kids. They had Jason, Jaina, they had Jason, Jaina, and Anakin. So they had 3 kids. But they only had one in this, and the son was Kylo Ren, and his name was Ben. And it was named after Ben Kenobi. But from what I remember is that maybe they did take it from another book, I don't know, but they only had one child. So Rey is not the child of either one of them. So we really don't know why her force powers are that strong. It's a possibility that she just had the force in her and it just awakened. But as for Finn, I don't think Finn's going to become a Jedi. Finn's going to become something else because he just does not understand the force at all. He is actually just like, he has the same understanding that Han does. He's still a little bit skeptical, but after seeing it in action, actually, I don't think he ever saw it in action. He never really had that experience. But do I think he's going to be a Jedi? No. He just really took the lightsaber in order to fight off Kylo Ren. But I don't think he's going to be a Jedi. But Rey is. She's going to be a very strong one. But unlike that reveal really isn't that much of a big deal. But it shows that when it comes to Kylo Ren, or when it comes to Ben, or Ben Solo, he actually did have a lot of issues dealing with the fact that he missed his family, and he was trying to shrug them off. He was just as human as Anakin. He was just as human as Luke. And even though he dabbled in the dark side, he still had the human part of him that he just couldn't shut off. And when he saw Han for the first time, I knew it was coming. The way it kind of set up, I know I acted surprised. I'm like, oh my gosh! But I kind of knew it was coming. The way they actually set up the lightsaber, I knew he was going to get stabbed. And at that point, we all knew that Han Solo, we all knew that Harrison Ford for the longest time really wanted to kill off Han Solo for the longest time. And we knew it was coming. There was huge rumors that he was going to die. And yeah, the rumor is true. He actually is gone. And Leia knew. She felt it. She knew. And I'm like, for all these years, we know that Leia actually has the Force in her. Why the heck has she not been using it? Or at least been able to embrace it? But she went back to doing what she knew. And she don't really know much of the Force, but she knows that she actually is Force sensitive. But she knew that Han was dead. And that was the really sad part. But honestly, I really wasn't as emotional as I thought I really would be. And it's not that I really came in this movie with high expectations. It was very predictable. The way they went, it was just a very predictable movie. But the way, I mean, it was sad. But honestly, I kind of thought that Kylo Ren would like do some kind of a Force jump and be able to flip and go after him. But he just stood there, told his troops to go after him, and he did. The fight between Daisy and Kylo was confusing because of the way the angles were. You can't really tell who was hitting what. I didn't even know where he got hit at. You couldn't even tell because the camera was either too close, too far away, or too shaky. So you couldn't really tell who was hitting who. But when it came to Finn, you can tell that Finn had genuine fear in his face. And Finn actually was able to fight off Kylo Ren enough. Well, he was able to fight off Kylo Ren, but do I really think he's going to be able to use the Force? No. I don't think he is. He's going to probably be a soldier for the Resistance, but I do not think he's going to be an actual Jedi. But guys, like I said before, there were really huge major plot points that should have been, some of them should have been addressed and left open for the next movie. You don't have to keep everything in a cloak of secrecy. You can actually kind of explore, and not explore, but you can kind of explain not only the minor plot points, but you can also explain the major ones that will actually gear and make the path to the actual sequel without leaving some confusion. But there were some major flaws in this movie, guys. But honestly, do I say not to watch it? No. It actually did stick to the overall theme. There was a Force that did awaken. There was a Resistance. There was a really huge, awesome villain. And they had to be destroyed. And other than that, the way they set up the new characters was great. The way they set up the old characters was great. The scenery was wonderful. But it was just those plot points that I really wish was explained and not really all cloaked in secrecy. You don't have to do that. There is a way that you can actually explain stuff without giving too much away. And even though people gave George Lucas a lot of crap about it, he was able to do that in the original trilogy before he changed it. So, honestly, J.J. Abrams can learn a lot from George. Seriously. But other than that, this is a great movie, guys. And I really think you should actually go see it. Despite all the plot points that are in there that are missing and makes no sense. And it doesn't. Just go in there. And for those that have not seen Star Wars, this is not for Star Wars fans. I'm going to be honest with you here. This movie is not for diehard Star Wars nostalgic fans. They'll give you a nostalgic bone, but it's not for Star Wars fans. This is for the next generation. These are for people that do not know anything about the franchise. These are people who do not know anything about the original trilogy or the prequels. These are people that are getting into Star Wars now. So for people who honestly think that this is actually for nostalgic fans, it isn't. It is not. This is for the next generation. So you can't go in there mad. You can't leave mad because it's not really for you. It's actually for them. So you have to deal with it. And that's how it's set up. Even though I'm kind of pissed off that they actually took a lot of major plot points that was not explained, and they actually had reference to reference to Return of the Jedi, but they didn't really stick to the original saga itself. That's the one thing that bothered me. But it's not for me. It's actually for them. So I have to deal with that. But guys, other than that, go see Star Wars. Just go see it for the first time, and you'll enjoy it. For those that really haven't seen it yet. But if you're actually watching this video, you probably have seen it, and it probably doesn't matter. But other than that, guys, those are my thoughts. This is the spoiler review, and I am done. Naturegirl 30 out. Peace.